Welcome back to Unsolicited Film Reviews. I'm Zach Miller. He is Martin Cook. And today we're talking about musical biopics with the release of Michael, the Michael Jackson biopic, about a week ago as we're recording this. Uh, there's just been such a tidal wave of these movies over the past couple of years. And while they've been a steady flow of musical biopics, especially about rock stars of the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on, over the past couple of years, there's just been a ton. And with Michael being the latest one, we decided, throw it in since we're doing The Boys every week, and
Mhm.
it's not everybody's cup of tea necessarily. But this is our bread and butter, talking about genres and films that include those genres. So,
Yeah,
what's up, Martin? How you doing?
not too bad. And especially also definitely in our wheelhouse talking about movies that include music because we're also big music fans. So this is a very good one and a fun topic for sure.
So, we're going to start off with Michael. We're talking about a plethora of films here. We're going to do 15 total, but we're not going to do our usual thing where we go in depth into each and every one. We're not ranking these. We're just going in chronological order. But like I said, we're going to start with Michael since it's the most recent one, and we were able to both go out and see it in theaters. And so, what were your thoughts on this latest biopic that has gotten a lot of hate from the critics, but has a audience score of about 97?
Yeah, I should say, we were able to get out and see it in the theaters, as did a hell of a lot of people. This one made, we're not going to do a full box office report this week, but this one made 97 million on its first weekend, and that was about 30 million more than projections. And I can't remember the last time a movie outperformed its projections by that much in an opening weekend. So that's really impressive. And it also speaks to a lot of how people track movie going, and obviously this hit a nerve that most prognosticators didn't realize. Overall, I will say I didn't think it was as bad as a lot of the reviewers and a lot of the critics. I did think that there were some issues with it, some pacing issues and some other things, but I also recognize that there are some very good reasons for it. So before we get into talking about the movie, let's just off the start say what those reasons were. This movie was basically done about 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
And then there were some legal challenges. And one of the big questions that people are always talking about with this movie is it doesn't deal with the allegations at all. And there's a very good reason for that. And that is that originally it did, but my understanding, and some of this is, sealed in agreements that were made between accusers and the Jackson estate and everything, but it kind of apparently addressed those accusers by painting them as sort of money seekers, which
Hmm.
obviously wasn't good. And so then they sued. And they came to an agreement basically to leave it out of the movie entirely. And so what they ended up having to do was go back and reshoot basically the entire last third of the movie. And so I think that explains some of the pacing issues that I thought the movie had. And it also explains for anybody who hasn't seen it why the movie just kind of ends at one point and then says Michael's story continues, not continued, continues, and why they may be thinking about trying to do a sequel. So that's just something to get out there for anybody who has or hasn't seen it. There are very good reasons why it ends the way it does, and also why it doesn't specifically address or deal with the child abuse allegations that I'm sure by now everybody is familiar with.
Right. So, just pure movie wise, I really enjoyed it. Definitely better than the 37% it currently has on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's maybe one of the better biopics over the course of this entire genre. Not in the top tier, definitely
No.
not, but it's basically a jukebox musical in a sense where Yeah, we do get into how Joe Jackson was just one of the worst people imaginable.
Yeah, a domineering, control freak father. Yeah.
And oh man, kudos to Coleman
Yeah, Coleman
Domingo.
Domingo, yeah, who plays Joe Jackson. Fantastic performance.
Yeah,
I actually
absolutely.
am not sure if I've seen Coleman Domingo do a bad performance. He's a very, very good actor. You know, he's
Yeah.
fantastic in Sin Sing. He was fantastic in oh, what was the one about the guy who set up the March on Washington rally? Anyway, he's been great in a lot of things for the last like 5, 6 years. He's just knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, he's absolutely incredible and totally steals the show. If there is going to be any nominations down the road for this film, it should go to him.
Yeah.
But that aside, yeah,
Rustin. Sorry. Sorry, I just remembered the name of that movie. It was called Rustin. Anyway,
oh,
sorry.
okay. Yeah, where he's the civil rights guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um Jafar Jackson is Michael's nephew. So I th we briefly discussed this when the news about this first came out a couple years ago. That well, obviously they're not going to get into all the allegations and the really dark shit that happened in Michael's life after 1992, I believe, because the entire family is involved. And if Jafar Jackson's playing his uncle, he's not going to want to get into all that. Really doubt there's going to be a sequel. But anyway,
Yeah, because the
uh,
sequel would have to get into that stuff, and then it's a whole different story from this one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a 180 opposite
Yeah. Yeah.
because this one is so positive and it's about how Michael was just trying to overcome his childhood abuse and uh become this and back in the time where they still wouldn't play black artists on MTV and
Crazy
just
to think about that. Yeah.
yeah,
Just nuts.
but yeah, it was formulaic but
Yeah.
enjoyable, especially since I went in thinking that it was going to be horrible when I saw the 37 and I saw some of the critics' reviews and I was like, well, it can't be that bad. And if you're a fan of Michael Jackson's music, as I am, and he just goes out, he plays Beat It, he plays Billie Jean, he plays Can't
Yeah.
Stop Till You Get Enough, and it's all the hits and seeing it in Dolby and with an audience, it was a good time at the movies. I mean, that's basically it. It wasn't anything profound.
No, I agree. I thought they did just enough of the story stuff with, as you say, I mean, the main overall arching plot is basically him trying to get out from under the thumb of his domineering father and find his independence, and that's kind of the arc of the story, and that was good. And then there was all these other little aspects of who Michael was about, not having any friends, and then he seeks out company in the form of animals and things like that, and how that was a little odd and also kind of sad. So that stuff I thought actually all worked pretty well. And then the music and performances were actually really well shot. And
Yeah.
Jafar, the nephew, did a pretty amazing job with the physical um, imitation. I don't know if imitation is quite the right word, but the physical performance of being Michael, I
Yeah, the
thought was actually,
choreography was
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
was pretty impressive from Jafar, who we've never really seen before in anything. So kudos to him and the choreographers and everything else, because all that stuff was pretty good.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, some strange storytelling things like Janet Jackson, I guess the whole family was involved. Janet didn't want to be involved, but that meant basically that in the world of the movie, she didn't exist at all,
Yeah.
which was very strange considering that she was the sibling that Michael was closest to. And so it was
hmm
weird that, they just, there was no Janet. It just didn't exist in the world of this movie. So that was kind of strange. And then the way that it ended because of the reshoots, because of what I've talked about, I thought was also kind of strange. It basically ended with about and they were fantastic, fun performances, but it ended with about 15 to 18 minutes just of straight concert. It just turned
Yeah.
into a concert movie at the end, which was a little weird and jarring storytelling and pacing wise. But aside from that, as you said, and actually a fairly entertaining movie if you can set aside all the other noise around it with the allegations and everything else.
Yeah, and I saw it on last Wednesday, which was actually like a early access night,
Oh, okay.
and the theater was just a mosaic of races and sexes and people, and that's Michael Jackson. He's the biggest
Yeah.
pop star of the 20th century,
Yeah.
and so I'm most people aren't as obsessed with movies as you and I are. So like the last 15, 20 minutes, everybody in the theater were just like clapping along and just enjoying, like having a good time at the theater, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't hate on that.
No. No.
So yeah, that's Michael. We'll we'll get back to it a little bit, but should get into the actual genre and like the tropes, because Michael was very formulaic.
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely followed into, and we'll get into a whole bunch of different movies that we'll touch upon here. But there are a lot of different ways to tell the stories of these musicians, these famous musicians that we've known and loved their music for years. And one of the most common is to, kind of start when they're kids and show the trauma from their childhood and what that means and how that affects their later life and go through a big chunk of their lives. And Michael definitely does that. But it also, follows into the same pattern of, there's a few others with kind of domineering influences in people's lives. So, we're going to go through a list of a whole bunch of movies, just mention them briefly, talk about some of the tropes that are common in those. And yeah, that'll be interesting. I should mention before I forget that in 2 years, we're mentioning some very famous musicians, probably the biggest, most famous 20th century musicians of all time, have had a few movies here and there, and that's the Beatles. But there will be coming out in 2 years, apparently in April 2028, four movies on John, Paul, George, and Ringo, with Paul Mescal playing Paul, Harris Dickinson playing John, Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things playing George, and Barry Keoghan playing Ringo. And it's still not entirely clear how they're telling these stories from the perspective of these four, but I'm very excited
Yeah, yeah,
about those.
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's a very glaring omission. Like, how has there not been a definitive biopic about the Beatles?
Yeah.
And you hear everything from it's going to be one movie split into four movies, or like there's all kinds of rumors spreading around. But whatever they do, it's the Beatles. So
Yeah, and all the families are involved, and so they have the rights to all the music, which should be great. There was a just very brief. There was a movie called Backbeat a number of back in the 90s that was
mm,
the Beatles in their Hamburg years, which I
mm,
really enjoyed actually because it was different from the trope that we're talking about with Michael Jackson. It was a movie where they just took a band or a musician in one particular time and how
mm,
that, and so this was them in Hamburg and how it set up the rest of their career. And I kind of enjoyed that movie, but that again, that wasn't really a definitive Beatles biopic. It was just an interesting story.
mm. Interesting. Okay, so we're already running a bit long, so you want to
Sorry.
kick us off?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's start off with The Lady Sings the Blues from 1972. And this was a movie about Billie Holiday, starred Diana Ross and Billy D. Williams, and Richard Pryor actually was in this. And this was the very depressing story of Billie Holiday's life, which, I haven't seen this movie in about 20 years, but at the time I had no idea the kind of life that she had led, basically grew up as a kid in a brothel, was raped, became a bit of a prostitute herself at times, and then obviously, again, that childhood trauma just led to drinking and drugs her entire life. And she just had a hell of a time and just could really never get clean. And that's on top of obviously all the racism and horrible shit that she had to experience. So this was nominated for was about 5 Academy Awards, and so one of the early prestige musical biopics, and definitely one that needed to be included. And it again falls into a lot of these same tropes.
Yeah, it's interesting. 72 seems kind of early for these kind of movies because, as I said at the top of the episode, it's been such an just a like an explosion of these over the past 20 years or so. But I mean, it makes sense because everybody that grew up in the 70s and 80s are now wanting to know the stories about their heroes.
Yep.
But yeah, Billie Holiday is one of the pioneers, especially female pioneers of just like Motown and jazz blues in the 50s and 60s. So for a 1972 movie to come out and get 5 Oscar nominations is amazing. I saw this. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I thought I did. I saw another like documentary about her like
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
many years ago, but I was looking for this one, and unfortunately, Lady Sings the Blues was not available on any platform that I can
Yeah.
find.
And it wasn't here in Canada either. I thought maybe it was just in Canada and you'd be able to find it. But yeah, that's an oversight. Get on it, Amazon or whoever the fuck does these things. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So then we're moving forward in time, but backward in time because we're going to 1984's Amadeus, which
Yeah.
is about it's a drama film about the life of Mozart, but it's actually more about his rival Antonio Scaleri, uh, played by F. Murray Abraham. Sorry,
Mhm.
and he won Best Actor for this film. And
Deservedly so.
yeah. This one is interesting. I tried watching this maybe 20 years ago or so because I set out to watch every film that won Best Picture, and I just didn't get it at the time. I was too
Oh,
young.
wow.
It
Okay.
just didn't resonate with me because I was thinking like I was starting to get into classical music, and I was like, well, this isn't. But yeah, I watched it a couple nights ago, like actually for the first time, like sat down and
Yeah.
soaked it in, and man, this is a brilliant, brilliant fucking film.
Unbelievable film. Yeah, a few months ago when we did our favorite films of all time, this almost made my top 10 and maybe should have
Mm.
in retrospect. I love everything about this film. And I think it's probably the best musical biopic, but it's also very unique because it doesn't share a lot of the other tropes. It's a movie about Mozart in a way, but yet he's not the protagonist. So
Right.
it does, highlight a bunch of the elements of his career and talk about things like his relationship with his father and how that impacted things, like, the creation of Don Giovanni and things like that. But really, yeah, it's the protagonist is we're seeing it through the eyes of Salieri, and it's just the whole thing is brilliant. I can't say enough about this movie. I love it.
Yeah, the whole aspects about like the French court scene at the
Yeah.
time and just oh my
Well,
God.
Austrian court or yeah, Austro-Hungarian Empire. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And yeah, Tom Holtz was just amazing, and his laugh is just
Oh man, yeah.
so annoying, but yet so endearing and funny. Like because he's always just like,
And so iconic. I mean, that laugh
yeah.
is just you've never heard anything like it.
But yeah,
Uh,
it does. It's one of those that doesn't really have a lot of the tropes that all of these other ones have. But we were when Martin and I were discussing last week which ones to include on this list. Yeah, Amadeus definitely belongs here. It won Best Picture, and Mozart's one of the best musicians of all time. So why not
Yeah.
why not throw it on here?
Yeah. A couple of years later, there was a movie in 1986, totally different kind of movie, totally different kind of music. That was Sid and Nancy, which was a movie about Sid Vicious and his girlfriend Nancy Spurgeon, and their just absolutely destructive codependency. And basically, this movie is one data point in the Gary Oldman can do anything um, argument. I mean, the guy has played Sid Vicious and Churchill. How that works is pretty incredible. But yeah, this one is basically the trope or the story of, drugs and destruction. Like there are sometimes in those stories, we'll get into a few of those movies where there's a redemption arc. There is no redemption in this movie. It is, I mean, clearly there's a bit of an anti-drugs message from this movie, but it's really just basically the story about these two people who very violent and destructive relationship between the two of them. They obviously do kind of in a fucked up way care about each other, and really they're the only two who kind of get each other,
Hmm.
but it just basically leads to both of their untimely ends. So this is a hard watch, but an interesting one to add to the musical biopic collection, and obviously about one of the most culturally influential bands of the 70s, the Sex Pistols.
Hmm. Yeah, and this coming out in 86, yeah, it was one of the first of its kind. It seems kind of passe and overdone now if you haven't seen it and you go back and watch it, because it seems like every rock star has just tread over that same path in one way or another.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, not much more to add about Sid and Nancy. Yeah, Gary Oldman is one of the greatest actors of art, not our time, but of all time. So, yeah, and so,
Just one side note. Interesting that Courtney Love has a small role in this movie. And,
mm,
this movie came out in 1986, and then she kind of got in a relationship, not exactly the same, but similar relationship herself later on in life that ended up with, obviously Kurt Cobain dying. So anyway, just an interesting life imitating art thing there.
yeah, yeah, that is interesting. So then in 1991, we have The Doors, directed by Oliver Stone and starring Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison in what I think is by far Val Kilmer's greatest performance, and
Mm.
the fact that he didn't win anything for it is just an absolute travesty in my opinion. I think it's Oliver Stone's best film as well. I'm not really a huge fan of his, as we've discussed in previous episodes. Like, Platoon was fine. Alexander was a shit show. But
Yeah.
all everything Oliver Stone kind of came together for The Doors.
Mm.
And yeah, also just a personal big fan of The Doors, so I think that makes a difference in these kind of movies. Is if you're already a fan of the music, then you're going to tend to like these kind of movies better, unless they just go off on the edge and do
Yeah.
something you're
Yeah.
not expecting. But again, it had Meg Ryan as Jim Morrison's longtime girlfriend, and just like super trippy, super just Doorsy. Like the vibe of the film matched the vibe of the band,
Yeah.
I guess is the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah, it really did. This was sort of the epitome of the acid rock scene, I guess. And that's a perfect way to put it. The vibe of the movie fit the vibe of the band. My one thing about this movie, I do think it is a very good Oliver Stone movie. The one thing about it is that, we kind of see again him kind of ruining his life with drink and drugs, and obviously that's how he ends up dying in the end. But what we don't get is an explanation as to why. And maybe that's fine. Maybe we don't necessarily need that kind of psychological analysis of everyone in musicians, but it's just kind of there. And so we just see him going down this destructive path, and it's just we're not quite sure what the reason is uh,
Okay.
in the
Yeah.
movie. But still, overall, a good movie.
Yeah, that makes sense. But he was so introverted that
Yeah,
like he would never even tell the truth about how his parents died or even
yeah,
if they were alive. So
yeah,
that kind of makes sense that we didn't get a window into why he was so fucked up because he wouldn't let us.
yeah.
And there weren't any sources to back up why or why he wasn't. So yeah.
Yeah, and there's another movie a bit later on that we'll talk about that's similar in that we don't really get that much insight into the actual person, in part because they're so private. And then yeah, and then as you say, there's been a whole spate recently, and it kind of kicked off in 2004 with Ray, movie about Ray Charles. And this is one that really does the like young kid to almost the end of his life, showing his entire life, the traumas of a childhood and how that affected him, drove him into drinking and drugs and everything else. Had so many of the tropes that are both good and bad in these movies. There's the person who first introduces him to drugs, little scene. There is maybe one of the greatest scenes ever of the this is them coming up with the song scene
Yeah.
when they're doing the based upon a real story when they're doing what I say bit where basically he had to fill time at the end of a set and came up with the song on the spot, and that scene in this movie is brilliant. But this is one that does have the drinking and drugs, but then the redemption arc at the end, like the him getting clean and the happy moments at the end of his life. So it's definitely a more positive one. And then there's going to be a bunch more of those like this.
Yeah, this really did kick off like the modern era of um these kind of movies being like, okay, we're gonna stick this actor in there, and if he does even a halfway decent job, it'll get an Oscar
Yeah,
nomination.
yeah.
And that's not to take anything away from Jamie Foxx because he's one of the most talented people on
Yeah.
planet Earth, and it's not really recognized as such, even though he is an Oscar winner and a Grammy winner. But I mean, God, the guy can sing, he can act. Uh, he's hilarious. He's had his own show, Jamie Foxx, the Jamie Foxx show in the early '90s. He was in Living Color. Like the guy just succeeds in everything he tries. And
Yeah.
so this isn't a Jamie Foxx podcast, but just yeah, yeah. Ray was a fantastic movie. But then the very next year we have Walk the Line. Of course, the Johnny Cash movie starring Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon. And this is where it really started to nail down the formula of we're going to start at as young as we possibly can, troubled childhood, uh,
Yeah.
bad relationships, drug addiction, and then coming back and uh, being sort of okay towards the end of your life. I mean,
Yeah. And also another great coming up with the song scene where he has to convince this guy in the recording studio to take him on. So he starts playing Folsom County Blues or Folsom Prison Blues. And yeah, but again, in structure, very, very similar to Ray, even though two totally different musicians, but very similar kind of movie.
and both beloved by critics and
Yeah.
nominated for a ton of Oscars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, jumping forward a bit more, we get to Get On Up in 2014, about James Brown, and this starred the late great Chadwick Boseman, one of his string of doing just these absolutely iconic American figures, which he also did Thurgood Marshall and obviously Jackie Robinson and this. And this one is similar to those others, except it doesn't quite have the same redemption arc because of course, James Brown's story doesn't quite have the same redemption arc. I mean, it has a little bit of that, and there's a little bit of some of the other stuff of, him getting in the influence of some people but then obviously all the drugs and everything else and the rise and fall, the him at his peak and then falling off and then coming back and having sort of some musical triumphs again. But it's an amazing performance by Chadwick Boseman. The story isn't as tight, but I think in part that's because you're dealing with the subject matter of James Brown, who is just always a bit messier than those other two guys.
Yeah, yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, it would be hard for a writer to come in and make a script about the life of James Brown. But yeah, as you said, Chadwick Boseman is fucking amazing in this, and it doesn't get as much credit as it should as far as this list goes. And I'm glad you brought it up to include it because it wasn't nominated for a lot of awards, and yeah, just yeah, again, as you said, the late great Chadwick Boseman, man, just just an incredible actor.
Yeah.
Then we have the very next year, Straight Outta Compton in 2015, directed by the Fast and Furious's F. Gary Gray. But the first real we had 8 Mile earlier, and there was a All Eyes on Me, the Tupac biopic, and there was a 50 Cent one as well. But this is the first
Yeah.
one that actually broke through as far as critics and box office, and well, first it covers NWA, and it was just nominated for best screenplay for the Oscars, but man, this was just a great, great movie. Uh, Covers everybody from Dr. Dre to Snoop Dogg and the
Yeah.
rise of West Coast hip hop in the early 90s.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite genres. So when this came out, what, oh, jeez, 11 years ago now. Um,
It's hard to
uh,
believe. It doesn't seem
yeah,
like it's been around that long. Yeah.
yeah, I saw it twice in theaters just to hear all the music and stuff, and yeah, I love Straight Outta Compton. Uh, Maybe not the best musical biopic over the last 30 years or so, but definitely worthy and very well made.
I agree. Yeah, I really like this movie as well. This was a movie, and this is obviously familiar to Michael now and a few of these other ones that did have some accusations around it because obviously the guys were involved in the making of her. They're living members. Eazy-E's no longer around, but of kind of like sanitizing a bit of their history a little
Mm.
bit. And so there were some of those accusations around it. There's been some accusations against Dre and some other people. But so that's also as we get more into modern musicians, that's probably going to be a bit more common when we start doing more and more of these biopics. And certainly is the case with the Michael one. But yeah, I agree. This was a great just a really fun and interesting movie and really took you back to that time and when this new more or less musical genre was exploding and that's always very cool and so that's another, you see that in some of these other tropes. We're back in the movies in the 50s. Oh, okay. There was one Great Balls of Fire movie about Jerry Lee Lewis, and again, sort of new musical genre exploding, and he was kind of there at the beginning of it, and you see that a little bit with James Brown in Get On Up, And then yeah, and this in Straight Outta Compton, and also another great like coming up with the song scene, or the oh damn we might have something here scene when they finally get Easy E on the mic and Easy E doesn't really know, but he's reading off Ice Cube's lyrics, and then when he nails it. And everybody's like, "Oh, damn! Do that
Yeah.
again." Riding down the street in my 6'4".
Woke up quick at about noon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
just a great
Yeah.
scene. Great scene.
And just quick kudos to O'Shea Jackson Jr. Jafar Jackson played Michael
Yeah,
Jackson like to a T, and O'Shea Jackson, Ice Cube's son, not only does he look like him, but
yeah,
he was fucking amazing in
it
that
was really
role.
good. Yeah,
Yeah. So with that, we're gonna do a drink break.
yeah,
Been a long time since we've done a proper team drink break on
yeah.
Unsolicited Film Reviews.
And we're actually going very boring here
Yeah, yeah,
because we couldn't quite find anything that encapsulated a good drink that encapsulated musical biopics as a
yeah.
theme. But since this week is all about Michael Jackson, we decided to light our hair on fire and drink some Pepsi.
Yeah, so when I went and just Googled uh generically like what are musicians' favorite drinks or like what are rock stars' favorite drinks, like it all popped up like, oh, just straight Jack, which makes sense. Like especially thinking like the Motley Crews who injected Jack Daniels famously into their veins. But we're not doing that tonight,
No,
unfortunately. So we're just doing a Jack, and I'm sorry, I know Martin still doesn't have American whiskey available to him because,
that's fine.
politics.
I'm just doing rye. Yeah, just
And yeah,
see.
Michael
Pepsi,
Jackson, Pepsi.
the taste of a new generation, as I think it was billed back in those days when Michael was doing the ads, and the unfortunate ad incident where his hair got lit on fire, and it was pretty serious actually. Maybe I shouldn't have been laughing about it because at the time I think there were a bunch of jokes about it, but it turned out it was actually a pretty serious accident.
Yeah. And I just found out this news, but my second cousin just passed, and she was a producer on the infamous Pepsi commercial.
No way.
Yeah, she lived a life almost like a Forrest Gump, but would never brag about it, would never name drop. But yeah, she
Wow.
was huge in
Would she have been on set that day or?
yeah, she was. Yes.
Wow. Holy cow. Man, what a story. So you will
Yeah,
see I
so
I don't have my yeah, so to your cousin. I don't have an actual can of Pepsi. I've got my Soda Stream, which is owned by Pepsi, and they have the Pepsi syrup. So there we go. Um, wow. Yeah, what a story. I'll have to hear more about your cousin later on offline.
oh yeah, that tastes like a Jack and Coke. I mean, sorry, Jack and Pepsi.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, nothing else to really add to the drink description, but it's the first team drink break we've had since the house fire, I think. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because you had the antibiotics and couldn't drink for a
yeah,
while.
good to be
So yeah,
back.
cheers. Yeah, nice. Easing back in with something simple. Just a
Yep.
little Ryan Pepsi.
So what do we got next?
So next up, then we've got more Oscar bait, and that's Bohemian Rhapsody in 2018. And this is obviously the story of Freddie Mercury more than it is the story of Queen as a whole. And
Hmm.
Rami Malek obviously won the Oscar for Best Actor for his portrayal of Freddie Mercury. This is another one of these ones that again has a bunch of these familiar tropes. So there's And this one is in a way similar to Michael and a few of the others, um, including Elvis movie that we had recently that we had sort of forgotten about, but it was is another one that probably should be included on this list. In that, one of the main themes is kind of the main character trying to get out from under the influence of a corrosive, manager or parent or something. And there's a lot of that in or partner or something like that. And there's a lot of that in Bohemian Rhapsody. But then also, a bunch of the other ones. There's another great coming up with the song scene when they come up with the song Bohemian Rhapsody and they're going through it in the studio. And this is one, it was an all right movie. I tended to think, and I think you agree with me, that it was a bit overrated and maybe shouldn't have gotten the Oscar buzz. And unfortunately, because it did, I think that meant that subsequent movies, including one of our absolute favorites the very next year, kind of got overlooked, unfortunately.
Mm.
But it's still definitely one that has to be included on this list as a pretty seminal biopic.
Yeah, I think this was like the ultimate paint by numbers biopic.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, because it just has every single one of the tropes that we've been talking about. And while Rami Malek did a good job, I think this was yeah, completely overrated as a film.
Mm.
Um, and well, I guess just down to its bare bones, I don't like Queen either. So
Oh, okay, okay.
I think they're maybe the most overrated rock band of all time.
Oh wow. Oh, okay, you really don't like them. Okay.
Yeah, I
No, no,
think
I mean I'm not a super fan or anything, but I obviously like them a lot more than that.
yeah,
Wow,
everything
interesting.
everything I think Bohemian Rhapsody is the most overrated rock song of all time. We Are the Champions and We Will Rock You both suck. And so I mean I don't want to
Wow.
I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think Freddie Mercury was such an
I won't
interesting
even get you
person.
started on fat bottom girls then.
Oh, terrible. Bicycle. God, don't even. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I think Freddie Mercury was a very interesting person, and again, yeah, I think Rami Malek did a fine job of playing him, but yeah, once again, just totally formulaic, and Queen's just not that good of a
Yeah, and this movie I remember having I haven't probably seen it since it came out, but I remember it having some pacing issues too, especially near the end. I mean, they do the formulaic kind of triumphant return concert, which was, a real life thing that happened. But the lead up to that was very strange. Like he drops by his parents' house and he's like, "Oh, okay, okay," and then he's off to the and like, "Okay, I'm over everything that happened." And it was very strange in that way, and kind of
yeah.
yada yada yada. A lot of the important moments. Um,
Yeah, the whole again, they try to manufacture the childhood trauma where
yeah,
like okay, so his dad just wanted him to be a good person and didn't want him to go be a rock star, but once he did, he was fine with it
yeah,
because
yeah,
so like the whole time he was like oh well, like oh I hate my family like but like his mom and dad were totally cool to him the entire
yeah.
time and so like they tried to manufacture that at the very beginning and I was like so why are you so why are you such a bitch. Yeah, so but then we have Rocketman
Yeah.
the next year in 2019 and God we've on one of the very first episodes of this podcast, if not the very first, we talked about how we thought this would win like all the Golden Globes back in 2019 because I if I'm not mistaken, I think our very first Spotify episode was talking about the lead up to the Golden Globes in 2019
Oh
and our
wow. Okay. Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
uh, yeah, so yeah, Rocket Man. Taron Egerton plays Elton John, and it's a true jukebox musical.
Yeah.
where it's a kind of blown out, exaggerated depiction of Elton John's life. And while it's not a straightforward drama, it kind of captures the essence of the rock star life in a way that not a lot of these other things do.
No, and we've talked about this movie so many times and how much we love it and why it's so good, the framing mechanism, all that stuff. But just to mention briefly a bunch of it does have a lot of the familiar tropes. It just does them in such an interesting and unique way that it doesn't seem tired, like it seems kind of fresh. But yeah, it has, it is the childhood problems, drinking and drugs, redemption arc stuff. It does do a lot of that. It does have the typical like on top of the world at the top of the charts and top of the world scene. But even that is so interesting and unique because it's Elton literally floating above his piano as
Yeah.
he's playing, and the whole audience is lifted up, and it's like, yeah, he's literally, it's just so well done and so interesting and so unique that even though there are some familiar tropes, they're just done perfectly. So yeah, we've waxed poetic about that movie enough. So then we did then to man, it's already 4 years ago was Elvis again. That seems hard to believe. What has happened to time? Um, but Elvis was in 2022, and that this was again another one of these ones with where the main kind of thrust of the story is similar to Michael. It's somebody who's under the thumb of a domineering person, in this case, the manager, Colonel Tom Parker, and it's about Elvis trying to struggle to get away from that. And in this case, though, he fails. He never really does. I
Mm.
mean, famously in the movie and in real life, he never does go and do a tour of Europe. Like he just never, because he gets locked into these Vegas residencies. And even though there is somewhat of a comeback before those residencies, he never capitalizes on that comeback, and so it's ultimately a bit of a sad tale, but a pretty interesting movie. Just on a side note, just this past year, Baz Luhrmann also, after making Elvis, he put out a concert film of Elvis, and I went to see it, and it gave me a whole new appreciation for Elvis. I gotta say,
Really?
just
Really?
yeah, just as like a stage presence, and when you're actually seeing him there and how he interacted with the audience and all that kind of stuff. Growing up, you kind of think, especially people our age or similar, you kind of think of, well, fat Elvis, and you can't imagine him that being. But no, he was pretty magnetic on stage, and you really see him giving his all, and that I'd recommend that concert film. It gave me
What
a greater
what
appreciation for it.
was that like 60s Elvis?
It was no, most of it actually was Vegas.
Oh,
So
really? Okay.
yeah, and that's the surprising thing. So it's basically a bunch of the clips. So it's him getting, and so they have all this background footage because I don't know if they're, again, maybe they were planning to make a movie or whatever, but they've got all this footage, and it's him sort of like getting the concerts together, getting the band together, getting everybody, the musicians, and just how kind of generous he was with all the musicians,
Oh,
and
so it's all
just
like backstage footage too, and
yeah,
oh
yeah,
wow,
yeah.
wow, okay.
No, it's really pretty well done. And again, I was never a massive Elvis fan, but I thought, yeah, went and saw it with a buddy who's a big music fan as well, and it gives you a better appreciation for even, in the kind of fat Elvis stage, why this guy was such an icon.
Wow, yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, again, so Elvis, the film itself,
Yeah,
blown out and exaggerated because Baz Luhrmann's gonna
that's what he
Baz
does.
Luhrmann.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm not sure he was the right choice to tell the Elvis story. Especially since it was through the eyes of Tom Hanks's laughably bad Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah,
And
that was not a good casting choice. Let's, yeah.
yeah, and so again, but uh, if you do a halfway decent job as one of these iconic musicians, as Austin Butler did, you're gonna at least be nominated, and in this case, win an Oscar. And it's still debatable as to whether Austin Butler is that good of an actor because it seems like he has just been Elvis since what was it, 4 years ago?
Well,
And
no, but then he became Harkonnen because then in interviews
right,
he's
right,
using the
right,
Harkonnen voice from Dune, so he
right.
just seems to like become these characters. By the way,
Harkin
I was looking
Harkin and
down because I was
Presley.
looking up the name of that Elvis concert film was Epic.
Mm,
Elvis Presley in concert. I just thought I'd mention what the actual name of it was. Uh,
epic.
Yeah, and then in 2024, and this is one that we've talked about on this podcast after it came out, was One Love, the Bob Marley biopic. And this is one, if I remember correctly, you, I think, liked it a bit more than me. I enjoyed it, but I think you really, really liked it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. First of all, I grew up in a beach town, and when I turned like 16, 17, started smoking weed. Reggae music just was part and parcel for the
Yeah,
package.
yeah.
And so I had Bob Marley bumper stickers on my station wagon that I yeah, so
Soundtrack
uh
to your life kind of thing.
yeah, and just been had Bob Marley posters in my dorm room in college, the whole shebang. But uh uh this one was one of my absolute favorites, the movie and the depiction of Bob Marley, because they didn't shy away from the scars. And I think a lot of these biopics do that to kind of whitewash uh their characters. But yeah, like Bob Marley was a womanizer. He did get in trouble with the law, although albeit it was just for, like smoking weed in London. Like who gives a fuck but
Yeah.
these days. But uh they really leaned into his Rastafari beliefs, and they got really deep into what that means to him. And I did a really deep dive into Rastafarianism when I was doing a public speaking class in college. So, they really did a great job of highlighting all the aspects of his life. And not only that, they did have the tropes. They had like as you said, the creating the great song. They had Exodus and oh no, play that. Keep playing that. Keep playing that.
Yeah.
And we'll get into how all that correlates at the end. But yeah, I really, really was a huge fan of One Love, and totally shafted at the award season.
Yeah, see, it's now been 2 years, so I don't remember exactly what my thoughts on it were. I do remember liking that they delved into the Rastafarianism and how that pertained to his life and how important that was. I think at the time I thought that they shortchanged a few of the relationships in the movie and didn't really get into them as well as they probably should have. Um, but if I remember correctly, that was why I didn't love it quite as much
Mm,
as you did. But still, yeah, an interesting movie. And obviously, again, iconic musical figure and one that was begging for a biopic. And this was, again, one where family was involved. Like I think Ziggy was one of the executive producers.
yeah,
And this, we should say this isn't necessarily a detriment. This is probably always going to happen for the main reason that if the family isn't involved in the biopic at all, then you're generally not going to get the rights to the songs. And without the songs, you're going to have a shit biopic.
yeah,
So,
totally.
so yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a bit of a criticism or, oh, the family's involved. And so it's going to whitewash things. Yeah, but you need the songs. So that's just kind of always going to happen. Um, Anyway, next up, that same year was A Complete Unknown, which did get much more Oscar no nominations and Oscar attention. This was the Bob Dylan one, starring Timothy Chalamet and a bunch of other people. A good movie. I liked it. I liked that what they did in this movie was, they did go span a bit of time, but a lot of it was focusing on one main part of his life. And I tend to like biopics in general, musical or otherwise, when they do that, as opposed to just kind of like birth to death kind of thing. And in this case, it was all about his decision to kind of go electric, which the folk music crowd thought was a big stab in the back, and he was an absolute betrayer and Judas, as somebody shouted out in one of the famous concerts. And uh, so it was very good in many ways. The acting performances I thought were fantastic. This was one that I alluded to earlier, kind of like The Doors, where we didn't really get an insight into who Bob Dylan is. And
Well, that's
again,
why it's called A Complete Unknown.
yeah, and yeah, so that's probably in part intentional, but it's also a little disappointing. If you're seeing about, you kind of want to know more about this person. But again, that's also in part because Bob Dylan is kind of like famously private and doesn't really talk about his inner, which is strange for a poet, but he doesn't show that stuff off very much to the public. So I'm sure that would have been hard for them. They would have almost needed to kind of invent from whole cloth reasons for him to do certain things.
Yeah, definitely. And this is another one we've talked about at length. It's when we were leading up to award season, and this got a bunch of nominations. And yeah, you guys, if you're longtime fans, you already know that I just think Bob Dylan is a fucking asshole. And but A Complete Unknown doesn't shy away from that.
No.
And from all accounts, Timothy Chalamet is also a dick. But all that said, Chalamet is an amazing actor. It was a terrific performance. Ed Norton was incredible as he always is,
Yeah. Monica
and
Barbaro as Joan Baez was fantastic.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Elle Fanning was great,
Yep.
and yeah, just just a great Bob Dylan biopic. And yeah, it is. I thought it was amazing that the first time, like our entry into this movie was uh, Bob Dylan coming into shit. I'm gonna forget the
Guthrie.
guy's. Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, hey, Woody Guthrie, I was gonna sing you this song.
Yeah.
That was such a great first scene,
Yeah.
and yeah, I had no problems with Complete Unknown. I thought it was maybe the best movie of that year. I think I had it ranked in the top at least three. I forgot what it was, but
Mm.
anyway. And we're rounding it out with Deliver Me from Nowhere, the Bruce Springsteen biopic from 2025 with uh 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 oh my God, how did I forget? Fucking
Jeremy
Jeremy
Allen White. Yeah.
Jeremy Allen White. Yeah. I always get his name mixed up with the guy from Succession.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Jeremy Strong. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremy Allen White as the boss, Bruce Springsteen. And this is one where it is a particular time in his life where it's focused on recording one album, his acoustic album, and it's also one of the most disappointing movies that I've seen in the past 20 years.
See, I hadn't seen it until this week because I remember you saw it early when it first came out, and you were so disappointed in it that I just didn't bother going to see it. But then in lead up to this week, I was like, okay, fine, I'll finally watch it. I think it's on Disney Plus or something, so it was easy to stream, and I liked the ambition of it, but my God, this movie goes nowhere for most of the movie. Like I seriously thought this was a 3 hour movie. And then I looked it up and I don't know how that movie was under 2 hours. It just felt like you were there watching it for so long. And because it's just Springsteen kind of wallowing in it. And I don't know, maybe this is being unfair. Maybe there are people who have dealt with depression, which is kind of what this movie is about, who find it enlightening and can kind of empathize with what Springsteen was going through. But I just didn't know why they chose certain things, why this was the particular moment in time that they wanted to deal with in terms of telling a Bruce Springsteen story. I mean, by the end of the story, it's just okay. He's doing a little bit of therapy. That was basically it. That was kind of the the end result of this whole thing. And so yeah, it's kind of in the time after the river, and instead of doing the lead up to his big breakout hit album, Born in the USA, they instead focus on Nebraska, which was it's just a very odd choices and some very strange things. The relationship in it I thought was very weird because it doesn't really go anywhere, and I guess it's just meant to show his inability to get close and form attachments with people. That, though, I guess was just an amalgam of different characters. It wasn't based on one single person, and so it was just all kind of weird and left me wondering why, when you've got Bruce Springsteen, one of the great American musicians, in my opinion. It's just a very strange movie as a biopic for Springsteen. So uh, I avoided seeing it after your negative recommendation, but then this week I was like, well, I'll go in fresh eyes and yeah, I tend to agree. It was disappointing, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially since he's lauded as one of the most like charismatic
Yeah, and
musicians. I mean,
all we see him is just him hanging out in a room by himself for most of the movie. Yeah, we don't see him on stage doing that much at all.
no, and especially the very first image of the movie. If I, again, I only saw this once, and it was over a year ago, but it was him just tearing up the stage with Born in the USA,
Yeah,
or oh no, it was Born to Run.
Born to Run, of course. Yeah, of course, Born to Run. Yeah.
But okay, so I was like, I try to see every movie I can in Dolby with so the sound's premium. And so, yeah, I was like, oh yeah, Born to Run, yeah. So I was like, okay, this is gonna be. I'm not a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, but I was like, okay, at least this is gonna be like we can hear a lot of his hits, and then he just spends the rest of the movie moping about nothing,
Yeah,
and
yeah, literally nothing. Yeah.
it's not like the rest of the rock stars where it's interesting where they get into womanizing and drugs or anything because he's a teetotaler. He's an infamous
Yeah.
doesn't do like he doesn't allow drugs or alcohol
Yeah.
even in his band. So I was like, okay, how are how are they going to make this an interesting 2 hours? And they didn't.
And they didn't. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. And even I gotta say, the opening scene, and I was just watching it here at home. But I've got a sound bar. I've got some pretty good sound on my TV and stuff. And the sound of Born to Run did not live up to Born to Run. Like
Mm,
that is such an epic song,
yeah.
and the whole band. And I was like, oh, so right off the bat, I was like, I don't know if the music is good enough.
Ooh,
And then we just didn't hear much of the music the rest of the time, except for one studio scene where they're doing Born in the USA,
yeah,
which was pretty good. But aside from that, yeah, it's kind of a disappointing movie. And again, tried to get into some of the tropes of like the childhood trauma, his father kind of abused him. But even that story didn't really go anywhere. Like, because his father was still around, he sort of reconciled with him, but it wasn't really clear why. Like, it's not like his father, like, it's not really like they had a reckoning on the issue.
right,
It was just all very strange.
right, yeah, yeah. Couldn't agree more. And then, if you have seen the majority of these or are interested in watching all of these, you got to go out and watch Walk Hard. It's it's about $7 on Amazon, at least in the States nowadays.
The Dewey
But
Cox story.
yeah, it's a 2007 movie that encapsulates all these tropes. It's most closely a parody of Walk the Line, but it has elements of Ray and just all these like the rise and fall, the womanizing, the drugs,
Yeah.
has all kinds of celebrity cameos, like has Jack Black, Paul Rudd, uh, and et al. As the Beatles do a mushroom trip. Just, it's a fantastic time.
Yeah. And then we're already going a little long and we've already talked about a lot of the tropes, so we probably don't need to go too much into them. But just to mention one other quick thing. I've talked a lot about the trope of the song creation scene, the like and but one real life example I just wanted to point out, no, so not a musical biopic, but an actual musical, like actual recordings, is the Get Back thing that's on I believe on Apple TV, or no, maybe it's on Disney Plus.
Oh, the Peter Jackson joint.
Yeah, where they have all this footage of the Beatles in the Get Back sessions. That is a real life version of those scenes. Like you actually see in real time Paul coming up with Let It Be and like the bass riff of Come Together and like they're coming like, up with the song Get Back in real time. It's pretty amazing and it's just cool to see it in light of all these biopics, these fictionalized versions where you see this and then you see it actually happening. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that has to be the probably the worst trope of all of these movies is that everybody just makes a hit song just like that, and all the band members are already there, they're on board, and you go everything from The Doors, from Ray Manzarek, the keyboardist, is like, okay, hitting some keys, and all of a sudden he comes up with "Light My Fire,"
Yeah,
and
yeah. He's like, I need an intro. Give me a few minutes. And then he's like,
yeah,
yeah, and then he's got it. Yeah.
and that goes all the way to Straight Outta Compton, as we talked about earlier, with
Yeah.
"Woke Up Quick at About Noon," "Boys in the Hood," Bohemian Rhapsody, same thing. Freddie Mercury's playing piano above his head, and then all of a sudden, like every single song, I mean, every single one of these films has that moment where, like, oh, a hit song just happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Even in our favorite Rocketman, like when he's doing your song and he's got the lyrics from Bernie Taupin and he just sits down and he starts singing it and his family is like, oh my God.
And then, of course, everything from Michael all the way back to Ray has the obligatory Billboard 500, where
Yes.
you start out at 200, and then we scroll up and, oh, so and so's at number one.
Yeah. And they always surpass some other famous band to become
Right.
number one. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Usually the
usually,
Beatles, because the
yeah,
Beatles always
exactly.
had a hit
It's
somewhere in the top
exactly,
10.
it's exactly what I was gonna say. And then, of course, the rise and fall, the montage of,
Yeah.
they get super successful, do a lot of drugs, fuck a lot of women, and they do the historic show slash comeback, and I guess the last one would be Oscar bait, because a lot of these people were nominated and won Oscars for movies that weren't fantastic.
Yeah. 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 It's still a fun genre and I'll go out and see any of them and some of them end up being pretty bad. There was the Amy Winehouse one from a couple of years ago, Back to Black. That was very unfortunately bad. Because I love Amy Winehouse. And a few of the Whitney Houston one a couple of years ago wasn't very good either. But I'll still go out and see almost every musical biopic just because I love them. I love music, and
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that Michael did really well is that the last, as we said at the top of the show, the last 20 minutes or so was just a concert.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
and
if you're
everybody
in,
can enjoy that.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally. So it doesn't need to be a phenomenal story. It just needs to be an entertaining theater going experience. And that's what a lot of these were.
yeah. But it works much
So,
better if it's a very clever and interesting and original story as well, like, some of the better ones like Amadeus and Rocketman. And
yep. So I think the next time we'll see you guys on a regular Unsolicited Film Reviews episode is when we do our beloved blockbuster draft, which will be in about 2 weeks or so.
yeah,
And until then, if you're a fan of the boys, we'll be still doing those for the next 3 weeks. And then in about a month and a half, we have House of the Dragon coming out. So Unsolicited Westeros is gonna be back. So we got a lot of shit lined up for you guys. And thanks for sticking with us. I'm Zach Miller. That is Martin Cook over there. And we'll see you next week on the Unsolicited Film Reviews podcast.
bye everyone.